Are the Crazy Mountains in Montana really named after Jeremiah Johnson's friend, Jane Morgan? And why does it matter if the place is named after her, or named by the people who had already lived there for hundreds of years? In the 1972 film Jeremiah Johnson, the title character meets Jane Morgan, a woman who has lost her husband and children to an attack by Blackfeet warriors in the mountains of Montana in the 1840s. Unfortunately, the loss broke her sanity, and she spends every evening crying and screaming at the graves of her children. As he tries to help her, Jeremiah Johnson says, "The Indians will not bother you now, on account of you are touched. They will be afraid." And there she lived alone for 20 years in a small cabin by the graves of her children. Many people believe the Crazy Mountains are named after her, but is that true? You can find the Crazy Mountains in south-central Montana, northwest of the town of Big Timber. Wikipedia's page for the Crazy Mountains paraphrases the 1986 book Islands on the Prairie, The Mountain Ranges of Eastern Montana. The name Crazy Mountains is said to be a shortened form of the name Crazy Woman Mountains, given them, in complement to their original Crow name, after a woman who went insane and lived in them after her family was killed in the westward settlement movement. But not everyone agrees with this explanation. The Crow people called the mountains Awaxa Awapaya Paya, roughly translated as Ominous Mountains, or even more roughly, Crazy Mountains. They were famous to the Crow people for having metaphysical powers and being unpredictable, a place used for vision quests. The source of that statement is the University of Oregon's Foundation Document for Honoring Tribal Legacies, which references books by Chief Joseph Medicine Crow, F. David Peat, and Frank B. Linderman. Let's read from the section titled Continuity and Destruction, Same Place Name, Different Explanation. Before Manifest Destiny resulted in major changes on the landscape, life for humans in the Yellowstone River region was constantly hazardous, but endlessly enriching, especially for ceremonial life. The ceremonies of the Northern Plains tribes empowered individuals and communities to connect with the spirits of the land. An elemental part of tribal life in the Northern Plains and Plateau region was to fast without food and water at sacred sites. This act of sacrifice allowed individuals to communicate directly with the spirits of their homeland and receive important revelations, which could then be shared with the tribal community. The continuous cycle of seeking and receiving visions are what helped to guide tribal leaders through perilous and confusing episodes in order to give continuity to generational transitions. The Crazy Mountains of south-central Montana are a sacred place where tribal people have visited to fast and pray for millennia. During the summer of 1804, as the Lewis and Clark expedition traveled by canoe up the Missouri River, a famous Apsa-Aluk chief named Alapo'oish, or Sorebelly, fasted on top of the highest peak in the Crazy Mountains, and received a powerful dream that helped to propel him into history as a leader on the Northern Plains. Alapo'oish was just one of many important chiefs to fast and receive revelations in the Crazy Mountains. One of the most famous Apsa-Aluk chiefs, Alakchi-Ia-Ahu, or Plenty Coups, also received a key dream while fasting there as an adolescent in 1861. In his vision, Alakchi-Ia-Ahu foresaw the Virginia City Gold Rush and the opening of the Bozeman Trail, which informed his tribe's diplomatic decisions when the invasion of the Crow homeland began in 1864. The picturesque Crazy Mountains were known as Awaxa Awapaya Paya, roughly translated as Ominous Mountains. An even rougher translation of Paya could be the English term crazy, because it infers an extreme and unpredictable nature. Awaxa Awapaya Paya were well known for their unique qualities that included their stark physical stature, their ability to draw storm clouds upon them at any time, and their metaphysical power, which was always abundant and potent for those who sought it in the mountains. The contemporary tale of how the Crazy Mountains got their present name is based on an 1870s yarn of how a pioneer family was ambushed and killed by pagan Blackfeet tribal members, with only one person, a woman, surviving the encounter. According to the popularized legend, the distraught woman escaped from the Indians' grasp and disappeared into the wild and treacherous mountains, surviving there in isolation as a crazy outcast. Although highly dubious, the myth of how the Crazy Woman Mountains became the Crazy Mountains is written on a Montana highway road sign at the Interstate 90 rest area about 10 miles east of Big Timber. The sign and the story have provided countless travelers with a violent and melodramatic explanation of how the Crazy Mountains were christened. I will point out the current sign states, "A woman traveling across the plains with a wagon train went insane. She escaped from the party and was found near these mountains." So they were called the Crazy Woman Mountains, a name which was eventually shortened. Note there is no mention of attacks by Native Americans. In this version of events, the Crazies became symbolic of how the early pioneers suffered untold tragedies before ultimately winning the West. The appalling story of a pioneer family mercilessly attacked by Indian warriors fits handily with colonial assumptions about tribal aggression and provides moral justification for removing the pagan, Blackfeet, and others from the Crazy Mountain region. But is tribal aggression really just an outdated colonial assumption? This controversy is tackled head-on by the 2009 book Circle the Wagons: Attacks on Wagon Trains in History and Hollywood Films. The authors criticize how modern historians downplay historical attacks by Native Americans on wagon trains. A battle has been raging between movies and history, or rather among filmgoers, critics, and historians. Although the conflict with the European Americans and American Indians in the East lasted longer, the most recent conflicts took place in the trans-Mississippi West. And it was usually the images of mounted, war-bonneted warriors of the plains that captured childhood imaginations and drew the majority of the movie-making media's attention. However, a recent revisionist interpretation makes an assertion that may surprise the average American: the wild western frontier was not wild. The Wild West was, in fact, quite a mild and ordinary time and place. The dangers of the Western migrations and the Indian Wars are nothing more than figments of the imagination of novelists and filmmakers. To counter these arguments, the book proceeds for almost 200 pages to describe, in detail, multiple attacks on wagon trains by Native Americans, including an appendix that lists more than 60 known attacks from 1829 to 1876. With about 500 pioneers killed and more than 150 wounded or captured. Yes, we are aware that white soldiers and civilians also participated in atrocities against Indian tribes, and those episodes have been detailed in numerous books and movies over the last 50 years. The very real trail danger that immigrants faced from Indians, in contrast, is a feature that has been whitewashed during the same half-century. We'll never know if Jane Morgan's family was really attacked by Blackfeet warriors. But that debate can't rule out the possibility the Crazy Mountains were named by Native Americans who visited there long before the arrival of pioneers in wagon trains. The tribal oral traditions, which described how the Crazy Mountains manifested their name, have been largely lost to history. But the contrasting spirit of the stories reveals their potency as cultural tools for understanding our shared history. What do you think? Are the Crazy Mountains named after a pioneer woman whose family was attacked? Or named by the Native Americans who had already lived in the area for hundreds of years? Let us know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching. Please like this video and see the links in the description below to watch Jeremiah Johnson and Westward Ho! The Wagons.